What does fatherhood mean to you? What did you learn from your father? And if you are a father or a stepfather, what do you want to give to your children? If you are a mother, what do you want from the father of your children? Last Monday, I had the pleasure of driving my grandson to Tennessee to see his father, and he said, "I'm going to ask my dad why he didn't get me an Xbox for Christmas." And I took on the most grandfatherly tone I can muster, and I said, "Don't worry about the things that your father might give you. You're about to get the best that a father has to offer: time to talk. I don't remember any of the presents my father gave me, but I do remember talking with him. When you are older, that is what you will remember." Since the industrial age, fatherhood has been defined as being the provider of goods, the provider of material things. But fatherhood is so much more. If fathers are merely material providers, they can easily be replaced by a support check. Fatherhood is so much more. Listen to this story by Dina Beck-Ellert. With supper finished, it was Mom's time for a break from her children, and it was our time to be with Dad. Cindy, my 8-year-old sister, got the book while Tom, my 6-year-old brother, and I, 4 years old, climbed on the gray couch. Book in hand, Cindy joined us on the couch, and we all waited for Mom to start the old reel-to-reel tape player. Dad was piloting airplanes in Vietnam for the Air Force. His 1-year isolated tour would be over soon, and he would be coming home. Throughout the year of his physical absence, our family received at least one tape a week from my dad. Mom played a section to us every day. Dad began each day's session by asking how our day had gone and what we had done. And we would speak to the tape machine as if he could hear every word. Each of us told him about our adventures. Unbeknownst to us, Mom would write down our responses, so Dad was kept up to date. In the subsequent tape, he praised our good deeds and gently corrected our errors. And after everyone told Dad their tales, he read to us from the book Mom had sent. Cindy turned the pages while Tom and I followed along to his voice. Sometimes Dad recorded himself teaching English to Vietnamese children in his neighborhood. It was always fun to hear the children talk in the strange language. Today, I don't remember the stories Dad read, but I do remember the feelings I felt. I knew that my father loved me because he talked to us nearly every day, albeit by tape. She goes on to write about how her father, when he finally came home, she was 4 and she really didn't recognize him. She had to ask if he was her daddy, and when he spoke, she recognized his voice and was sure. Her father had given her something unforgettable: time and words of concern. He told her about his life, and he asked about hers. And with his wife's help, he corrected her and praised her. He was intentional about giving time. Now, in her story, she does not say, but I wonder if he kept on being intentional after he came home from the war. I doubt if after supper he called his children into the living room and spent time asking them about their lives and giving them guidance. I imagine the rigors of making a living, adjusting to civilian life and maintaining the house, stole time away from his children, so that perhaps he may have been more present with them when he was in Vietnam. I visited a website called Dads at a Distance, and they provide a list of things that a father can do when he's away. And among these items were: go to the mall, have a photo of yourself put on a pillow and then send the pillowcase and send it to your child. Make an audio or videotape of yourself reading bedtime stories. Send home a photo documentary of what you do all day when you're away. Have a star officially named after your child. And begin a life's lessons booklet. Each week, write down a few of the lessons you've learned and how you learned those lessons. And I looked at these items and thought, these would be nice things for me to do, and I live with my son. I realize that I'm often complacent in my parenting. I assume that just because I'm there, it means I'm doing something. Will my son have fond memories of playing Nintendo while his father was in the next room answering emails? Will we look back and laugh at the times when we were both sucked into the electronic vortex of our lives, oblivious to each other's presence? Ah, yes, those were good times indeed. What if we made tapes of me telling him stories of my childhood? My son loves the stories I tell about my wild friends. Of course, I was always well behaved. Ben also loves Gail's stories about how she was always bringing home stray dogs, probably myself included. But if we were intentional and made a collection of these, maybe spending 10 minutes a day just telling those stories, and he'd have quite a collection by the time he went to college. And when we were dead, he might play them for his children and our grandchildren. And he might remember laughter, and he might remember love. Why haven't I had a star named after him? We could look it up together. And rather than the frequent and unsolicited sermons that pour from my mouth, I'm sure he would prefer a book of my wisdom. He would be able to open and close it at his choice. I am fortunate to live with my son, and I need to make the most of it. And I know many men who do not have this opportunity. Modern life separates fathers from their sons, whether it's a 60-hour work week or divorce or many other distractions. We need to find ways not to be apart from the ones we love. Our children need us, and we need our children. We are imperfect, and yet they need us. They do not always fulfill our dreams for them, but then that's not their job, is it? Their job is to chase their own dreams. We can show them many pathways, but we cannot choose and travel one for them. And women can help us on our journeys. Be partners in parenting, even if other partnerships have failed. And just because a father's style is different from yours, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. Agree about the big things, school, safety, responsibility, but be flexible about many other things. Children benefit by knowing two very different people are able to love them deeply. And men need to be more assertive about being full-fledged parents. We are not just helpers. We are not just play pals. We are not just the enforcer of the rules. William Doherty, a professor of family social science at the University of Minnesota, wrote in the UU World, "Fathers are often left out of the discussions of effective parenting. In fact, when people talk about generic parenting, they're usually talking about what mothers do. In the 17th and 18th century, fathers were in charge of their children's moral development, reading to them from the Bible and making sure they behaved well. This changed drastically in the 19th century when fathers moved into the industrial labor force and families migrated to the cities. Whereas earlier fathers were present to their children all day long as co-workers in the farming community, fathers who worked in factories were gone from the family from morning to night. Tradition still referred to them as the head of the family, but actually they took the lesser role of backup for the mother and disciplinarian of last resort. For about 100 years, there's been a movement to make fathers less aloof. In fact, the term dad was first used in the early 1900s. That seemed like a remarkably late development of that word. And it suggests that fathers can be buddies and playmates to their children and not the stern taskmasters. And since then, dad has replaced father in the lexicon of parenting and in two-parent families. And the role of playing with the kids has been added to the role of backup for mom. Too often, fathers aren't expected to do the hard work of raising responsible children, the down and dirty work of making sure they do the chores and homework, of making sure they show respect for others, and finding opportunities for them to contribute. But it's worth it for fathers to do this, to be intentional about being part of your child's life. Spend as much solo time with your children as you can. See yourself as the on-duty parent whenever you're at home, unless you and your spouse have negotiated downtime. Don't assume that you can tune out the children because your spouse is around. Avoid handing over your child to your spouse when you get frustrated. Boy, that's tempting. And resist your spouse's attempt to rescue you when you're in charge of the children. If you're feeding the baby, hang in there when he or she gets fussy, and don't let your spouse automatically take over, unless there's also a time when you take over for her. Don't rely solely on your spouse to research and develop a philosophy of child rearing. Learn to be a complete parent and do it all the time. And then also, lastly, work on maintaining your marriage and protect it from the children. And I think that's so critical because I think children can demand so much, and that if you're not in there pitching with a partner, your lives will grow apart so much. But also the kids, you have to remember to look at each other and find times when you can farm the kids out. And so you can find that time to nurture that well of love that those kids need so much. Now, these suggestions of Mr. Doherty are good, but often real life intervenes and prevents us from being the parent we'd want to be. But we need to do better than whatever we're doing now. There's always room to improve. Rather than bringing presents, be present in the lives of your children. Rather than giving gifts, give yourself. Speak. Listen. You do not have to have all the answers. Just give the best answers you have. Find a way to love. At the UU Men's site, there's the following quote from Aaron Kipnis. The newly emerging image of sacred masculinity is of a creative, generative, nurturing, protective, and compassionate male, existing in harmony with the earth and the feminine, yet also erotic, free, wild, playful, energetic, and fierce. The meaning of this is to be whole. Be the type of father that is the best example of manhood. This will allow your daughters to trust men and help your sons to be men. There are infinite ways to be a good father. Some are better at cooking, some are better at home repair. Whatever your strengths, pass them on to your children and give the room for them to discover their own strengths. Cheer them on at soccer games, cheer them on to graduation. Coach them in the most important things in life. Talk with other men about what it's like to be a father. There is no need to go it alone. And we can just start that discussion here and now. I invite anyone to speak about what fatherhood means to you.
Experience that way. And just that very simple thing, was enlightening to me, in that men in general, and men specifically, I would try never to put the kids in actual danger, but we'd have adventures.
And try to combine those things into I let my wife raise the kids in the early years, and then I let my wife raise the kids in the later years. I felt that the duty of the father was to provide the home and money. I spent my time doing that. I told my kids, I don't expect you to love me, but I expect you to respect me. And I do have a temper. Nobody ever sees it usually. And I think that if your kids respect you, they will love you. And you set by example what you want your kids to do in the future. I never let them go without telling them what I thought they should be doing. Occasionally they follow.
Regardless of what the story that brings me to that point. But the thing is that what I do remember being old enough to appreciate a time when he sat us down as a family saying he made a decision about a major life change. And while he was responsible for the decision, what I remember most was him bringing us all together, 3 young daughters, and at least explaining what the changes would involve, and including us in knowing that he didn't have it handled, how it was going to turn out. And I have had deep respect for him since age 11. Due to that process, I have passed that on to other people that I come in contact with that are going through major changes that have children. And they said that's one of the greatest suggestions I've heard, is that you don't have to have it handled as a father in order to have respect for the children and love and admiration. And from that, what I wanted to honor my father with today, who is still living, is just this enormous
joys of fatherhood come later in life when your child is grown and you have the joy of an ongoing relationship. And I remember specifically when our daughter, who married a Jewish man and made the decision after a few years to convert to Judaism, she was taking what they call their Jews by choice class in the temple. And this, I've often thought, what if we did this to people who wanted to become UUs? But she had to take this class for the better part of a year. Every Monday night she went to class, and she gave me the reading list, and it was comparable to some of the books that I remember from seminary. And she would go to her class on Monday night, and then she would go home and she would call me on the phone and discuss what they had been doing in class. And I thought, well, here I am, father of an adult daughter, and still having the fun of helping her with her homework.
One of the things that I remember distinctly about my father was going to Boy Scout camp one summer and having gone off on an overnight camp out away from the troop and coming back, and my father was there, and I was filled with dread that my father was there at Boy Scout camp because we didn't get along all that well. And as I came into camp, all these kids ran up to me and said, "Your dad is so cool." He's been playing baseball with us all day today, and he didn't have a glove, and so he figured out none of us had gloves, and he said, "Oh, we don't need gloves." And he got these little cans that they used, that the vegetables came in, and they all played baseball with these cans and had plastic. And I remember that distinctly, how important that was. That's when I figured out my dad. And I'm one of those dads who would work all the time if I had the chance. And I remember distinctly when my son, when he was in second grade, came home with a flyer about Scouts. And since then we've been in all the Scouts. And although there are many, many, many things wrong with Boy Scouts, one of the wonderful things it does is give an opportunity for fathers to be with their kids and to do things that are fun.
Well, there are not many things that I know for sure about fatherhood, but a few bearings have surfaced in my life. I know that nothing has changed me in my life quite like being someone's old man. In so many ways. Dr. Doherty is a good Unitarian, as you know, Charlie. I was friends with him in Oklahoma City when he was at the University of Oklahoma Medical School. We're blessed with 4 grandchildren now, and they're wonderful, but a very close second for us has to be watching our children parents. That is just really.
Thank you. Let us now rise as we are able and join in singing hymn number 1, May Nothing Evil Cross This Road.
May Thank you.